radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I need your help to get to the year 1985. You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right, welcome, Fade to Black. I am ready for this, night 3 of our UFO hearing week, because this is bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. Let's do this, man. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and Ray's Hobbs. This is Fade to Black. Tonight is night 3. Night 3. Our guest tonight is Ron James from MUFON. He's with us, and we're going to be talking about the UFO hearing. We've had Stephen Bassett on Monday night. Last night, Sean Cahill and Ray's Hobbs. That was a great show, too. 2 different perspectives, very deep insight, and we are going to continue that tonight with Ron James. And Ron is great. He's a director. He's a host. He's got a TV show. He's got his film studio. He is the director of media relations for MUFON. And he's also got a new film out. We're going to play the trailer for that a little bit later. And he's been at this for a very, very, very long time. Disclosure, chasing this down. He has interviewed just about everybody, and he's great. And his take on what's going on. And I got the feeling he's not on the show yet, but I got the feeling it's going to be a couple of reveals tonight that are going to be very, very interesting. So all centered around the UFO hearing that took place a week ago yesterday in Washington, D.C. All right. Coming up, I've got a few things that are happening. Now, I've been making this announcement because, well, 1, I'm happy, but number 2, I just don't want people to go and try to book tickets or seats to our tour in Egypt this October. That tour is sold out with Billy Carson, and it's going to be fantastic. We've got 80 friends, 2 buses. It's going to be incredible. Logistically, that's going to be a fun thing to pull off. It's going to be great. We've got the entire ship for the Nile cruise to ourselves. And wow. And of course, celebrating my birthday, but that is sold out. All right. But I will be in Detroit next week. I can't believe this. Next week on June 5th for the world premiere of Billy Carson's new film. It is called Black Knight. I'll be there for the red carpet. And if you want to attend, you can. And we've got links up not only here, but in social media and over on our website to go and get yourself all set up for that. There's going to be a Q&A and red carpet, and it's going to be a great hangout. Okay, there a lot of the people that appear in the film will be there too as well. I've gotten a lot of great email from friends that are going to be there. And this is going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's going down next weekend. And then I guess it's not quite the weekend after, but on June 18th, I'll be hosting Disclosure Fest here in Los Angeles. And that is a one-day event, Saturday, June 18th. Okay, I'm going to have Adrian Valera on the show here shortly, and we'll do a complete preview for this year's Disclosure Fest. Okay, so that's going on. Head to disclosurefest.org for tickets and info. Everything is in the description box below if you're on YouTube. All of our sponsors, memberships, the podcast, everything you need, Twitter, whatever, everything is below, and it's also over on our website at jimmychurchradio.com. Please visit our sponsors. Starting next month, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 new sponsors for Fade to Black. It's going to be an interesting run starting next month. Do you guys realize that this is Memorial Weekend coming up? Wow, snuck up on us really, really fast, didn't it? Okay, so, and we've got a great week next week on Fade to Black too as well. Somehow we have to top this week. All right. And so that's where I'm at. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And you can start your internet with me there. I've been talking about Instagram. Instagram is a fun little escape for me. I'm doing my music stuff over there and guitars and things. And I'm going to go through some of my pictures too as well from the past and post them up there too. Music stuff, music only. And I got lots of stuff that I've never posted before. And so there you go. So follow me on Instagram if you want to follow my world of music and guitar. And that is at Jimmy Church Radio over on Instagram. Okay. All right. Yeah. No UFO stuff over there. I've got UFO stuff everywhere. I do it every night on the show. Instagram is my little escape. It's my escape. It's a lot of fun. I shot, I don't know if I'm going to do this on Instagram or what, but I shot this video the other day, and let me see if I can pull this up. I shot, you probably can't see it, but I shot a bird in my bird bath, literally taking laps, backstrokes, breaststroke, freestyle. And I shot and I think so, and then I shot some hummingbirds, and then this is my escape out of the world of UFO. I shot this morning. That is, I don't know if that's a crow or a raven, but he's the size of a friggin' turkey. I bet you that guy, and he didn't care. I was out there. He's this big. He's got to be 20 pounds. I mean, he's ginormous. And I just shot that video today. So anyway, maybe I'll do my nature channel next. Jimmy's Hummingbird channel. Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The Sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. I've got it live right here in front of me. Did you guys see the picture that I posted about that robot crab that's this big? Did you guys see that? Look at that. That's the edge of a penny. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio and go and look at that. That is crazy town. More on that in just a bit. Hashtag F2B is the Sandbox, and you can check out, that's why I brought it up. There's that picture of that crab right there. That is just nuts to me. All right, let's get to the breaking news. Aerosmith. When was the last time you had, have I ever said Aerosmith on this show? 10 years. Have I ever said Aerosmith? The sheriff. Aerosmith have pushed back the start of their Las Vegas residency by 3 months so Steven Tyler can complete a drug treatment program. According to the statement by the band, he recently relapsed following foot surgery. The band was originally slated to resume their Deuces Are Wild Vegas residency June 17th following a 2-year break from the road. It will now begin September 14th. Earlier that month of September, they are booked at the Maine Savings Amphitheater in Bangor, Maine, and Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts. As of now, those shows are still going forward. Relapse. Pain. What do they call that? Pain management? Yeah. There you go. Well, earlier today, I watched the Boeing Starliner landing live, and it was this afternoon in White Sands, New Mexico. This was the finale of the Orbital Flight Test 2, the OFT-2, they're calling it, which lasted for 6 days. Pretty cool to see the capsule float down with its 3 parachutes. Yeah, so majestic. And then landing in the desert on a pillow of airbags. Perfect landing. It was crazy. And then you got to watch the convoy of vehicles approach. They had the live streaming from the side. It was pretty cool. And not a drop of water in sight. Yeah. Is that what they're going to be doing now? So the astronauts are going to land in the desert, not in the water? It's incredible. There you go. Thank you, Kaz. She just posted. There it is. Look at that. Those airbags. It was crazy. That was fun. That was pretty awesome. All right. I talked about this robotic crab earlier. One has been developed by scientists, but to see it, you really need a good pair of eyes. Healthy eyes or glasses. It's insane if you want to see it. The tiny bot measures just 0.02 inches wide. That big. It's like that big. Making it the smallest ever remote-controlled walking robot. Despite being smaller than a flea, the robot can bend, it can twist, it can crawl, it can walk, it can turn, it can jump, and it can shoot a video of you while you sleep. Are you creeped out yet? You should be. Researchers from Northwestern University who developed the robot believe that the bot could be used to perform a range of tasks in confined spaces, like spying on you. Yeah, Black Mirror. A giant dragon of death. That's right. Well, actually, there were 2 dragons of death with a 30-foot wingspan. There was a second one that was uncovered that had a 27-foot wingspan. No word yet. I guess they're going to run some DNA testing to see if this was mother and daughter, father and son, mother and son, father and daughter. Don't know yet. But one was slightly smaller than the other. 30-foot wingspan. The skull was as big as its body. All of this unearthed in Argentina. It is the largest pterosaur ever found in South America. The fossils were found during excavations for a civil construction project about 500 miles outside of Mendoza's capital city, Mendoza. Incredible photographs. Kaz, where's my picture of the pterosaurs? You're a little late. Come on, Kaz. I'll retweet it. Let's get this show cracking. OTD on this day in history. Could today be the biggest day in human history? Because in 1977, Star Wars opens in theaters. Is that like the biggest day? It's close. I mean, it's close. I'll never forget. Thank you, Kaz. I was walking through the living room. My dad and I, my dad just recently divorced his wife at that time. We were living alone. And so I'm in the house alone, and I'm walking through. I remember it was night because it was dark, and the TV's on. Walking through the living room, and the Star Wars commercial played, and something made me stop. And I look, and I watched the commercial, but at the end they had that explosion in space, and I went, "What?" I watched TV all night, waiting for that commercial to come back and play, and it never did. I was like, what was that for? That was what was that? Telling my friends about it the next day. That was a big deal. It was a really big deal. It's just like right in the front of my head. I'll never forget it. Fader fact. Okay, you guys know what an iPhone is, right? This is an iPhone, right? This is an iPhone. These are iPhones, right? Okay. We know what iPhones are. This is your fader fact. iPhone is actually a Chinese brand of leather products, and none of them are phones, which is why Apple lost its legal battle against them and has to share the trademark for the word iPhone with iPhone, the Chinese version. And that is your fader fact. I bet you didn't know that. Apple owns the legal system, right? You can't go up against Apple. FBI can't go. You're going to lose, right? Check that out. That is a crazy fader fact right there. That's the shot, Ken Priest. Star Wars. Kaz, you are so good with this. How do you... I'm just going to let Kaz doesn't know what my news is. She doesn't know what my fader facts are or my OTD. She doesn't know. And that got posted 10 seconds. That's amazing. Follow me on Twitter and pick up on what's going on. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. You'll get your stuff in real time, just like everybody else. And Kaz, that is impressive. Tonight, we have very special guest. Ron James from MUFON is with us for night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. We've had an amazing week so far. Monday night, Stephen Bassett was here. Last night, Sean Cahill, Race Hobbs did a drive-by. An incredible show last night with both Stephen and Sean last night. I've had nothing but an endless run of email coming in thanking Fade to Black for those last 2 shows. And that doesn't happen too often. I get thanked all the time. I'm just talking about that kind of reaction. Yeah. All right. Kaz says, thank you. Thank you, Kaz. All right. Where am I at? Oh, River Moon Coffee. RiverMoonWellness.com. Had a friend. My agent called me today and he said, so Jimmy, I need a podcast microphone. I said, oh, really? You're going to do a podcast? I am. I'm going to do a podcast. I said, okay. All right. And he wanted to know all about microphones. He said, I've already picked this one. He said the name. I said, nope. He goes, man, you cut me off. You don't want to hear about the microphone? I said, nope. I said, do you want to use this, or this? Really? How do you know? Have you ever used them? I own them. Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. Giving podcast advice to my agent. Okay, rivermoonwellness.com. I brought that up because that conversation went down during my first cup of River Moon Fade to Black blend. Kaz Kaz just tweeted, she says, this show and you give me life between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. I thank you. That is what I'm talking about right there. All right. I want to talk about time travel. And it's that time again. I know what you think. Okay, here we go. Jimmy's going to talk about time travel. But I just finished reading. I read it twice this week, actually. A new book. It's called Time Machine Tales, the science fiction adventures and philosophical puzzles of time travel. And written by Paul J. Nahan. And it was published recently, back in 2021. It's an excellent book. It's a thick book. Really, really thick. And it's almost, at times, I'm like, this is too much information. This is too much. It's getting repetitive. But no, it's so excellent. I don't mind. I don't mind the repetitiveness. Time travel stuff that is published seriously is hard to find. And good time travel stuff is nearly impossible. It just is. And the deal is, this book hits it on all cylinders. Okay, so again, the book is called Time Machine Tales, the Science Fiction Adventures and Philosophical Puzzles of Time Travel by Paul J. Nahan. I suggest this book to anybody. It is great. It's a fantastic read. But there were a couple of gems in this book. And one of them, it brings up, of all things, the Fermi paradox. And in the book, and I'm like, what? I didn't know this. I thought I knew everything about the Fermi paradox. In the book, it says the Fermi paradox wasn't called the Fermi paradox until 1967. What? Say what? Didn't know. I didn't know. And it's funny, to find out this in a book about time travel. So there was that little nugget in there. And the other thing that I found out in the book that was just as shocking was that Einstein never mentioned time travel in either special or general relativity. This was brought out through research of the equations in the late 50s by other researchers, by other physicists, not by Einstein. And I was like, wow. So it forced me to go back and do some other research. You got to read this book. This book is fantastic. It covers paradox after paradox. And while reading, I thought about Jesus. I always do when it comes to time travel, I want to go back to the crucifixion. There's a movie called The Man Who Lived Forever. I think that's what it's called. I've talked about it before. Came out about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's about this college professor that's like 50,000 years old. He's Neanderthal, and he's lived forever. He's got some genetic abnormality. He can live forever, right? And so he says in the movie, he goes, because they ask him, they said, what about Jesus? And then they go, wait a minute, were you Jesus? And he goes, I was, right? And he goes through this. And so as I'm reading, paradox after paradox and going back and grandfather paradox and, the watch that your mother gave you and you went back and, it's just paradox after paradox. And then I was thinking, what if you went back to the crucifixion, you go back to Jerusalem, you go back to Galileo, and you find out that Jesus wasn't real. Nobody knows who he is. He doesn't exist. What if you found that out? And then you played Jesus like the man who lived forever. And so I'm going through this twisted thought, and I thought to myself, that's not a paradox. You're not killing anybody. You're not retrieving a watch. What if you went back? You're not set up. This is nothing. You just go back arbitrarily. This isn't a paradox that is already set up for you. No. you going back and killing your grandfather, or you going back and seeing no, you're not in play here. You go back to Jerusalem, you go back to Galileo, you go back to the Mediterranean, you're in Israel, and you find out that there's no Jesus. And then you play Jesus. You become Jesus. Is that a paradox? Does that disrupt everything? I don't know. So then as this thought goes through my head, like a chapter later, no, it wasn't a chapter. The chapter's only 5 chapters, and each chapter is like 500 pages. But let's say 50 pages later, I read the same thing or something very close to it. And about going back, it might have even said Galilee. And I thought to myself, this book is great. Because I just thought about this, and I wondered if that would be a paradox or not. And how would science treat that? And other researchers, would that be a paradox? And would that disrupt things? And then there it was in print. Now, you have to read the book to see their version of that unparadox. But the book is worth the read. I love time travel, and every aspect of it is investigated in this book. And there's a couple of things, a couple of gems that I'm seriously going to steal from the book and present a couple of years from now when you guys forget that I've talked about this book, so I'm safe. And in 2 years, I can bring it up, and I'll make believe that I thought of it, and I'll just straight up steal it. But at least I'm telling you now. All right. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. That book is called Time Machine Tales: The Science Fiction Adventures and Philosophical Puzzles of Time Travel by Paul J. Nahin. Tonight on this show, Ron James from MUFON is with us. It is night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. We're going to continue that tonight. And then tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer and UNX networks. This is Fade to Black. I'll be right back with Ron James. Stay with me.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate, with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch, roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Christina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time. It's new. It's the X.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Second cup of coffee. I have to get ready for Ron James. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Ron James, the media director for MUFON. I think I've got that right. You know, he's the dude. He's here tonight for night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. He's a filmmaker. He's an on-camera personality. He's a writer and editor, researcher, content creator. Yeah, head cook, chief bottle washer, and the co-founder of MUFON Television, an online TV channel boasting the world's largest collection of commercial-free UAP-related material. UAP? It's called MUFON, Ron. It's UFO. It's called MUFON. What would it be UAP? Hold on, I don't even have Ron in yet. And that's it. We're going to talk about that. That's the first question. He has created 7 feature-length documentaries and dozens of original independent series episodes, along with winning 19 national awards, including 4 EBE awards, the Telly Award, and the Aegis Award for excellence in broadcasting. He currently produces his own shows, including Bigger Questions, Spacetime, and MUFON Presents. He maintains his own independent production studio right here in Los Angeles, California, and I would like to welcome. Is this Ron? Help me out? Am I welcoming you back to Fade to Black, or is this the first time you've been on? Ron, are you listening? Okay, Ron's got me muted. Ron, can you hear me? Ron can't hear me. Ron, speak. He's a media personality. He's a filmmaker. And Ron cannot hear me. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can get this figured out here. See, I can go to private chat. And watch this. Ron, we are live. Can you hear me? And let's see if he sees that. And we can hear you breathe.
Yeah, you've had me on. I think I've been on once or twice.
Okay, now, can you hear me, Ron? You can't hear me. You can hear me. This is, Ron, we're live on the air right now.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. We're live on the air. We are doing the show right now. Ron.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Ron, are you okay, Ron? We just did a fantastic sound check. What happened? Okay, Ron. I'm going to pull you out. You need to get ready. This is live. We just did a great sound check. And now Ron I'm watching him. He's changing his headphones. And I literally said, don't change anything. You sound fantastic. Don't worry about the headphones. So everything is fine. Everything is great. Okay. All right. Comes on. That's why you never change anything after sound check. That's right. That is that is amazing. I'm watching him, and I'm gonna give him so much grief. And let's see. Okay, Ron, are you ready now? No, Ron is still not ready. And this is great. Ron, are you ready now? No,
yes,
Ron.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ron, we are live, dude. Everybody can hear you say, "Can you hear me?" We can hear you. This is
great. Then we're good to go.
Live. From history, I will not edit any of this out. This is staying forever. When my next conference that you are at, I'm going to play this video for 2,000 people.
I think that'd be all right.
Okay. You never change anything in sound check, man. You're a filmmaker. You're a director. You shoot everything. I've done interviews with you. You have this amazing studio and this production and the lights and assistants and people and things and spaceships. You've got all of this stuff going on. You don't change anything between sound check. You come in and you test the video and the lights and the cameras. You don't change it and then come back and roll.
I changed the headphones.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Ron, let's get started. Can we start the interview now?
Yeah. So you wanted to know about UAP. So,
it's called MUFON.
Yeah. It's been an interesting kind of dilemma for MUFON as well. If they're going to rebrand it, how do we go with that? Do we try to come up with some new thing that incorporates UAP? Do we just leave it MUFON, which I think is probably the best idea? Be interested to see what people in the chat say. Or do we just kind of acknowledge the UAP thing while we try to combine them, like I always do, like UFO/UAP? So, there's a lot of discussion about that. So I'm glad you brought it up. It's a dilemma for MUFON.
Okay, let me help you out. It's called branding. Coca-Cola doesn't change their name to flip-flops.
That is the argument that I've made, and I think I've been pretty successful with it.
It's called MUFON, and that's it.
Yeah,
we're very successful branding that goes back.
But we'll still say UAP when it's appropriate.
Oh, what are you going to change the name to? MUPON?
No, we believe me, we actually battered around a bunch of different new kind of things that we could do to incorporate it, and they were all terrible.
So
that I'm just sounds like any of them.
Yeah, that sounds like a really, really bad idea.
It was a really, really bad idea.
Yeah, it sounds
the Mutual UFO Network will continue to be just that: bigger, better, stronger, and not rebranded.
Okay, so hold on for a second. Let me see here. MUAPN. Yeah, so you're going to call it MUAPN.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Believe me, there was a whole bunch of things floated.
MUAPN. Isn't that the spice that they snorted in Dune?
Something like that. And we wouldn't want to be confused with a substance that people snort. So,
MUAPN.
We'll just stick with MUFON. It's good. It's working.
Now, you're a director. You've got your studio here in LA. I was at your other studio, or is that the same studio?
No, I've been through. You were at my studio where I had my spaceship set. That's the one that was over by SpaceX.
Yes.
I've had two more since then, and now I have a really nice one in San Pedro.
Is it nicer than the one I was at?
Yeah. It's not quite as big, but I've got giant video walls, so I can change the set.
I know you do. See, this is the thing. Everybody, we're going to get to the UFO hearing in just a second. But Ron talks a pretty big game, right? Okay, so Jimmy, you got to come to my studio. You got to come check it out. It's really nice, and you hear that from people, over and over again over the years. And okay, whatever. I pull up to this place across the street from SpaceX, and I walked in. I was like, what is going on? This is like Zoetrope. This is like Lucasfilm, and I could not believe your studio and what you had going. It was just absolutely incredible. So when you tell me your new studio is nicer than that one, it scares the crap out of me. You do things first class.
Well, except, pick my headphones prior to a Jimmy Church interview.
Oh man, classic. Absolutely classic.
But people don't know this about me. I do a lot of work in the production field. Like I've done a lot of big bands. I help do Guns N' Roses and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff that we could talk about another time. But I make a living in production with my own production company, and I just take the money I make from that and throw it into the black hole of UFO research and interest. So I'm kind of I'm contributing to the cause in my own way.
Sure. One question. This is just for me. You've literally interviewed everybody. Somebody got away from you. Who's the one that got away that you didn't get a chance to interview?
It's interesting because if you would have asked me that question a month or 2 months ago, or back in January, I would have said Michio Kaku. Because when I did the Bigger Questions series, I interviewed all the big scientists of the time, Russell Targ, Dean Radin, Amit Goswami, John Hagelin, a bunch of guys that were in The Secret. But I didn't get him, and I was communicating with him. But I did. I went in January, the day before my birthday, rented a studio on Manhattan Island and interviewed him for 90 minutes, and Ralph Blumenthal also. So Michio Kaku was one, but he is no longer. And then I've gotten just about everybody.
Did you ever sit down with Lloyd Pye?
I did not sit down with him. And there was another one that we just lost that I regret not getting. It's been a hard year, a couple of years for losing luminaries in the field.
Yeah, for sure. And Lloyd Pye is there's many, but I would have loved to have interviewed Lloyd. I had Michio on many years ago, and he's great, no doubt about it. But for me, it's Lloyd Pye. He's the one that literally got away, and that's the one. If I'm gonna run through this career and look back and go, man, I always think about Lloyd Pye. There was just something about him that he gelled with my personality, and I just have the feeling that it would have been a fun and really cool interview. So now let's jump forward. The UFO hearing was last Tuesday, May 17th. There's a lot of build up to this. You and I talked, of course, leading up to it. And we may or may not discuss those conversations, but it did happen, and it went down last week. You've had a week to think about it. But what's your assessment?
Well, when we first started hearing about the fact that they're going to set up this congressional, that Congress was going to stipulate that they do this thing where they set up these civilian interfaces, and then they started talking about how they're going to do it. Well, the Pentagon's going to take over, the DIA is going to take over, and they stripped the civilian oversight section out of the Gillibrand Amendment. People started saying this is going to be more of the same. And as much as I hate to say it, it looks like they're creating the ability to have these groups that are the same old kind of stovepiping. Well, we don't have it, he has it, nobody knows where it is. So it's just the shell game. It's the move the new narrative forward. And we can go over, I've made some notes about it, step by step throughout the hearing. And as good as it is that we've had this happening and that, it is an open conversation, I'm convinced that there was a lot of conversations, private conversations that led up to what they were going to say, how they were going to say it, because there's some very clever wording throughout the whole thing. And it's really interesting.
When you say you've combined two things, and I find that interesting: clever wording, but open conversation. So, are you saying that that there was an idea for the direction of this hearing that was maybe a little bit pre-planned, and then it didn't go according to plan, or that it was according to plan and they stayed on message?
Well, I think both Bray and Moultrie had pretty much a talking point set, and that they were pretty aware of what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. I'm watching the chat. It says people are having trouble hearing me.
Yeah, don't worry about the chat. I've got you cranked up here. Just pull the microphone closer to you.
Cool.
Yeah.
So these guys, they understand their talking points, and they understand what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. And this whole plausible deniability thing is built in to some of these responses. For instance, when they asked about the nuclear incident. Now, everybody knows about that. It's been widely reported. It's widely documented. And when you say something like, well, that data is not inside the auspices of the UAP task force. Well, there you go. Just in that one sentence, it's clear evidence of stovepiping, where they're going to be able to say things like that. So it's plausible deniability. And it's also clear evidence of having, thought about how are we going to answer these questions. And so when they've created this task force, what I'm afraid of, and what a lot of people have been afraid of, and what it's starting to bear out, is that it's going to be this thing where they could say, well, we know about this, but we don't know about that. And if you get into the questions that were answered, especially later on as Mike Gallagher started asking questions, even though he later said that the only reason he asked those questions was to get them debunked and out of the way, which was sad. But those questions that he was asking, the answers were very, very interesting. And these guys have had a long time to practice saying something, answering a question without telling a lie directly, and kind of just beating around the bush and not giving us the truth without blatantly lying at the same time. And so what I'm afraid we saw roll out with this hearing is the new narrative is going to be bolstered, which is basically that Blue Book ended, nothing happened, ATIP, OSOP started. And the real story, Jimmy, is, I'm sure you know, we all know, is that the story is what happened in between those. That's when the back engineering was going on. That's when the materials research was going on. That's when the stuff was ported to industry and government and sequestered away in such a way that it's that Freedom of Information Act requests can't get to it. And so by denying that stuff existed, that's the new narrative. It's been floated ever since Lou and the Times broke back in 2017. That's been the story. And now it's officially the story. Andre Carson opened up the hearings with that story. Blue Book ended, and then we found out there's another program that started, and so it's a shame that we're getting these hearings. That's great, symbolically. But it's a shame because we're not getting the truth, because the truth lies in between the end of Blue Book and before OSOP started, and all of the stuff that happened in between.
You're right about that. And your new film is called Accidental Truth. And I'm going to play the clip, your trailer for this, if you don't mind. And I want everybody to check this out. And this is exactly what I think Ron is addressing.
Alone with people who have run secret weapons programs, interrogated terrorists, kept closely guarded secrets as a profession. And all I can think about is getting them to tell me something they don't want me to know.
378-20584.
He's up. I'm running over here now.
In 2017, the UFO subject exploded into the mainstream. A New York Times front page story broke about a shadowy government program studying UFOs.
Pentagon had this secret UFO monitoring agency, which nobody knew about.
The man who ran the program made the media rounds with shocking statements.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
But can we trust the press and the media, or are they simply following orders about what to say and when?
I can tell you from my knowledge of the New York Times, the New York Times is not afraid to confront the government.
Having been legal counsel for the New York Times and for NBC News, the people on the boards of editors of those things, feel themselves to have a certain patriotic duty as they perceive it. to not reveal anything to the American public that the national security state people don't want revealed.
So I don't want to be bound by what Henry Sheehan said about his, concepts of what the Times prints and doesn't.
I was working my way through NASA, the Department of Defense, and various other agencies.
A new group was formed to supposedly help usher in the truth to the masses. New characters emerged, promising a new era of openness and straight answers about the topic. But who are these people? And was anybody really going to tell us anything that brought us concrete answers?
It was the first time I really digested the enormity of the national security implications of the UFO subject.
So for us to just go ahead and spew out to satisfy the idle curiosity of a few, that's not our job.
The CIA and all these people associated with the Skunk Works and the other intelligence agencies, you're not the right people to come out with this. You're really not, because you're the ones that have been lying to us for 70 years.
We have every right to know the truth. And it's not okay that they're holding that back.
Don't ask me, because I'm not going to tell you.
Instead of new and conclusive answers, we were given a whitewashing of the past and a new narrative created to fit the day.
People now in our government, people in the private sector, are beginning to not only take this seriously, but begin to align themselves corporately, governmentally, to actually now begin to do something about it.
By sort of extracting a lot of the history out, they're able to make it seem like, wow, this is a real mystery here.
The official story soon became an eerie echo of 70-year-old events.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
Aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So if there's an issue where the government is doing something we don't want to, then it's up to us as a people to change that. But it doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship.
They don't want anything examining what they do. They've got the future in their possession. They've got the most exotic technology and science imaginable, and they have it. Why would they possibly want to share it?
Chris Mellon, former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, said in the Washington Post that the government had not been studying the UFO topic, and he would know, but we pressed him on it.
Now, it's always possible that there's something that I didn't know about, didn't have access to within the department. I can only say what I saw.
Shortly after saying this, he makes a stunning admission. Nick Pope, a longtime ex-government pundit in the topic, denied official investigation of the subject for years, until he didn't.
The more interesting UFO sightings are being looked at, but not under the auspices of a formally constituted UFO research program. We now know about a government UFO program, but we might not know about the government UFO program.
But can we prove these secret government programs have always existed? Who ran them?
I ran a program inside the government. I had all of the services involved.
I've seen the photos. I can only speculate about why there is such sensitivity. The hard copy file will be released in about the year 2072.
And I've argued that we're not at the stage of asking the right questions yet.
It's a great question. I don't know if I can answer that.
What did they study? What conclusions did they come to?
There's a new technology involved here. First of all, the hulls on these objects would have disintegrated if they're made out of earthbound materials. So you need something that is super strong, that can go through underwater, through the atmosphere, and into space. What kinds of materials can do that? Things that we cannot do.
The congressional committees, staff, were briefed on, with slides referring to material recovery, apparent material recovery from crashed UFOs.
If you have the debris, now you've got something. See, the way this game is played is they don't care what you know, they care what you can prove.
So have you studied classified materials, but you just don't have them?
I just shouldn't say anything more.
You shouldn't say anything about that. Okay, all right.
You can put that on there, I just can't say anything more.
Right, no, that's fine.
Might have been an accidental truth moment.
The problem I say with the UFO community, they simply refuse to take yes for an answer.
There you go. When does this release? Ron?
It's coming out in fall. We're shooting for September, but I can't give an exact time because it's fluid. Things are happening so fast, and we're up to the minute. The final cut of the film will actually involve some stuff from behind the scenes in Congress that we're working on still. But yeah, fall 2022. And the same company that has released The Phenomenon, all of Stephen Greer's movies, Jeremy Corbell's movies, they're making it their flagship fall release.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. Now, let's go back to your comments about the UFO hearing. When you say this is something that you've been investigating for a long time and trying to chase down the real answers. And when somebody says something and then turns around and is either in denial that they said it or they change the narrative, now we've got a decision to make here, and we've got to get to that truth, don't we?
It's a really tough decision, Jimmy. I can tell you, I can reveal for the first time on your show that just like you just had the first reveal of this film, nobody knows about it yet until now. Nobody's seen that trailer until now. But I can also announce that MUFON has actually been behind the scenes having very high-level meetings for 3 months. And we've met with a lot of people we can't say, but it's the upper echelon guys in Congress. And we've been helping to kind of educate them about what's going on with this stuff. And we've got an open door to go back. We're giving them a big presentation next week where clips from this film are actually going to be shown to these guys. But we could talk about the hearing and go through some very specific points that illustrate that we still have a problem with what the public is being fed. And I don't want to point fingers. Obviously, we have a relationship with Congress that we don't want to endanger, but at the same time, we don't want to be the people that somebody says, hey, I'm going to pull you aside, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody else. Because, that's the devil's deal. Who wants to get involved in that? That's not MUFON's job. So we're working very, very hard to foster relationships with the body politic and stay true to the fact that we're about getting information to the public, and that's what we need to do. So it's a very interesting tightrope to walk, and there's some very interesting stories that are going to be coming out of it.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Ron James of MUFON, is here. It is night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. I'm yours, Jimmy Church, of the Game Changer and Unnext Networks. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, VX.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. And I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can right now get your own free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer.
Einstein the Ancient Crystal Skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Ron James is here. Night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. Monday night, we had Stephen Bassett. Last night, Sean Cahill with Ray Hobbs. Tonight, Ron James of MUFON is with us. And tomorrow night is Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, Ron, I want to set the stage for everything. Before I've got to sneeze. Here it comes. Oh, man, don't you hate that? Now it's gone. Okay, moving on. I had my finger on the mute button, man. I was ready to go. I sneeze loud. Before the hearing, Andre Carson tweeted out that it was the first UFO hearing, his words, in over 50 years. And so he set the tone leading up to the hearing that this was a UFO hearing. And we know what UFO means in popular culture. UFO is one thing and one thing only. And that is that. And then he did his opening statement. He brings up Blue Book. He brings up Roswell, and he set the tone early on. How did you feel about that approach from Representative Carson?
Well, I felt the tone that he set is the same new narrative that these guys have been trying to roll out from day one. And, that new narrative is like I said earlier, we closed down Blue Book, nothing happened. There was no official interest. Then we had ASOP and ATIP. And that's the story. It's been the story since the Times broke in 2017. It's been the story that they've used to try and whitewash the past and create a new narrative for public consumption that eliminates that big middle part where so much important stuff happened. And so I was a little alarmed to see that they opened the hearings by reinforcing that story, because it's not the story. And I suppose there's an agenda to get things to the public in a way that maybe we'll double back and we'll look at all this stuff, or maybe it's going to be swept under the rug for forever, because there's a lot of accountability that would come into play for what's been going on since the Roswell years, all the way up to when we finally broke the story about ATIP. But the official, what I call the new narrative, is that nothing happened in between that time. And to hear it just be the introduction to the hearings, especially since I know the kind of stuff that has been shared with some of these people, it was a little bit disappointing.
Well, I guess, yeah, and I agree with you, and you're right, but I think the question was more about his attempt to set the tone for it to be a UFO hearing not a hearing about drones, and not a hearing about adversarial technology in China and Russia, that we are here today to talk about UFOs.
Well, Rick Crawford went in right after that and kind of sewed that up. So the opening about the UFO thing, that is true, and they were talking about UAPs, and we're here to talk about them. And he didn't say yes, they're drones, but then right after that, Rick Crawford from Arkansas, I think it was, he got on and said, the UAP thing and the whole aspect of it that people are looking at, I'm more interested in what our adversaries have in technology that could threaten us, and if this is a part of it. So he kind of picked up that ball and took it further down the field.
Yeah, he did, and you're right about that. And I did make specific note in my notes about Crawford changing the tone off of what Andre Carson attempted as the chair, right, of the committee, and that was interesting. But it was Crawford later on in the hearing that also changed his tone, and he opened the door up to his interest in ET and contact. And I found that interesting, where he went from towing the Department of Defense line in the beginning of the hearing to later on. I was like, man, Crawford ain't that bad of a guy. It was like really strange for me. Did you catch that?
A little bit. I think it was a little too subtle to be picked up by most people. And the people that are really watching this with concern and, hanging on every word, we heard that. But was the overall message to the public that, and, I'm not sure that it was. But it was interesting to see him turn around. But, there was a couple other people that spoke up. And everybody talks about when Gallagher... when he laid down all the questions about the big deal issues, the Wilson Davis memo, the nuclear incidents, the possession of materials, the incidents of previous programs. And then a couple days later, he said, I only asked those questions because I was trying to get them debunked and out of the way so they don't interfere with stuff moving forward. I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, but that was disappointing, because the fact is that every one of those questions has an answer that needs to be looked into officially, and the answers that were returned, and we could go through each one of them and talk about them if you want, the answers that were given were not good answers. They were just more of the wordsmithing and shell game. We don't have that data. Well, does that mean there's no data? No, we just don't have it. It was hard to watch.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's talk about Bray and Moultrie and the way that they handled their opening statements. My vibe, I want your vibe. I'm talking about at that moment. I think that they were too comfortable, that they thought that they could just show up and phone it in and this thing was going to be over and they were going to go home. That was the impression I got from their opening statements, that this was going to be an easy run. They ended up getting very uncomfortable later. So with their opening statements, do you think that they thought that this was just going to be a quick 90 minutes and in and out?
Well, I think that, they had definitely had some rehearsal time to understand and create their talking points. When Moultrie made his opening statement, it just absolutely blew me away. I mean, this guy basically said, look, we're the military. We've been doing this for decades. He literally says this, studying everything from adversarial technology to this, to that, to everything else. And then at the same time says, and now we're going to bring UAPs into it. It was the most ridiculous, self-contradictory thing I've ever heard anybody say. If you're the United States government and your job is to protect the people of the United States and be 100% on top of every technology that exists that could be a threat, could be a leapfrog technology, anything else, and to actually openly say, yes, we've been doing it, that's our job, and then say, oh yeah, everything except UAPs, we're just now thinking about those. It was like, hello, let's put that through a thought exercise and see where we end up.
Well, okay, so two things happen then, if we're going to stay right there at the beginning, and I'm just going off of my memory, but one, Schiff jumps in and says in his opening statement, I don't even think he was a member of the committee. And so I think he just sat in. Well, he can. He's chairman, right? So, but he said, UFOs, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like UFOs are one of the world's most enduring mysteries, right? And that was pretty compelling coming out of Schiff. He didn't say drones were one of the world's most compelling mysteries. He said UFOs were. And that was before Moultrie and Bray had their opening statements. Again, coming off, that was after Crawford, right? So you had Andre Carson, then you had Crawford, and then Schiff coming in to steer this back away from adversarial Russia, China, and back to what this hearing was about, which was UFOs.
Yeah, I was really shocked, again, that they would assert their leading ability, capability, interest, and power in observing everything that could be of interest to the military, and then in literally the same breath say, oh, and now we're adding UAPs. When we know, anybody who's studied this for any length of time knows these things have been around for a really long time. These military sightings are just now starting to report them, but they've been around for a really long time. And so this whole idea that they're still trying to convince us that there's been no study of this particular topic until these recent programs, everywhere they insert it, unfortunately, we are a public who knows way too much at this point and understands stuff, and too many facts are already on the table. To continue to try to insert this new narrative of, we're just now looking at this. This is the biggest military force, intelligence force on the planet ever. And to say, we've been doing this as professionals for this long, but we've been ignoring this big giant elephant in the room, it's preposterous. And the way it was stated, anybody that really analyzes the words and watches the statement, they'll understand what's really being said. And it's not good.
Yeah, sure. And Moultrie's opening statement, where he went at foreign governments, adversarial technology.
Right.
And he also said, without mentioning ET, by the way, in his opening statement, he didn't go there, but he did say, matter of factly, that everything can be identified. And then he closes out, which is a very strange thing for him to, we're talking about, this is on the record. And then he closes his opening statement with saying, well, there's one other aspect to this, and it's natural phenomena. And I thought, okay, here's a guy that is absolutely prepared to stay in his box. And that's what he was there to do.
And what they've done, Jimmy, is they have created these new boxes that it's going to be very easy for them to stay in, because they can say things now like, well, that information is not part of the UAP task force. Well, we haven't looked at that case because it's not part of our charter. And so now they've created this really convenience box for them to stay in, and they can still not talk about anything else. And that's pretty much the stage they set. So everybody that's cheering the fact that we now have this program that's going to be doing this and supposedly bringing transparency, we don't really have that. We have a stovepiped situation where plausible deniability is the name of the game.
Well, when Bray did his opening statement, and I was very, very focused on wordplay. All right, how are they gonna do this? How are they gonna do the dance? And Bray said in his opening statement that the UAP task force collects data on UAPs in our airspace. And then he closes out his statement after saying that, staying very focused on technology. He said, but there is a category for the UAP task force for possible scientific discovery, quote. And I thought, what did he just say? Is he talking about contact with ET? What is this possible scientific discovery that he is referring to? But it had an ET feel to me. When he said that, possible scientific discovery, what went through your mind, Ron?
Well, again, it's just the way that they're encapsulating this. They're preparing for their version of disclosure, but it's not going to be the ripping off the Band-Aid of the truth that we all really would like to see happen. So if you fast forward a few years and you look at where we're going to go if we take this trajectory, it's going to be something like, we're going to discover evidence of life on another planet, possibly with Webb, possibly on Mars. And then they're going to come to the conclusion that these craft are being operated by some sort of non-human intelligence, but we're not sure what it is. We have no clue. And then it's going to progress from there. And the entire past, the entire 70 to 100 years of deception, for whatever reason, is going to be swept under the rug, and we're never going to get the truth. And so some people are satisfied with that. I've talked to very close associates that are like, hey, as long as it leads to the acknowledgement eventually of a non-human intelligence engaging the human race, then great, that's disclosure. We'll take it. And, it might be what we're forced to take. Because it's going to depend on whether or not we can push politicians, we can push government, and we can confront them with what we know is true and see how much more information we're going to get. But this newly wrapped package of disclosure is very disappointing if it's going to continue down this trajectory.
Well, there was, at this point, one of the representatives, it might have been Schiff, asked the two of them, and I think it was pointed at Bray, said, you guys are only investigating the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff that you can get to. Low-hanging fruit were the words that were used, that you're not going after the challenging stuff that you can't identify, and you're not applying the science to that. You're only looking at the low-hanging fruit that is easy for you to do the dance with. And Bray came back with, I think it was Moultrie, comes back with, we, the Department of Defense, is getting the method of reporting standards together. We're working on that. And then he says, we, talking about the other stuff, we actually do want to know what's out there. With this generalized reference to E.T. I thought that was pretty interesting. Do you think Moultrie's being genuine when he says that, no, they are going past the low-hanging fruit? They want to know if E.T. is visiting this planet.
Well, yeah, and that would be great, especially if it wasn't for the fact that I believe that a whole lot of them already know that, and that's the problem. Now, I'm not going to go and say specifically that these are extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli or whatever. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're even a whole other aspect of human civilization that's leapfrogged in technology. Maybe it's a whole other race that lives on this planet underground or something. They could be interdimensional travelers. Could be all these things. But let's just say, for the sake of it, an unknown, possibly non-human intelligence. Now, for these guys to go, oh, yeah, we'd like to know if that's really happening. There are elements within their wheelhouse that already know, that have craft. I mean, this is what I'm talking about this new narrative. It's just, let's create this thing where we can say, oh, wow, look what we found out together. We're sharing it with humanity. And it's going to be, it's their rebranded way of doing disclosure. And every time somebody says something like what you just quoted, they're just towing that line, and they're ignoring the truth, and they're ignoring the people that know a little bit more of it than the general public. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's by design, but it's frustrating for all of us.
Now, Schiff and Representative Wenstrup, he goes by Dr. Wenstrup, both of them went back and referenced the UAP Task Force report from August 25th of last year. And one of them brings up, hey, wait a minute. In the UAP Task Force report, you said that there are propulsion systems that you guys can't identify that don't make any sense. And then Wenstrup says, and then in the UAP Task Force report, he said that there were 180-degree and 90-degree turns that would be impossible and exceed our knowledge of known physics today. And Bray responds with something like, well, it could be non-terrestrial. We certainly would want to know if it is. And I found that line of questioning interesting, but Bray or Moultrie didn't really want to answer some very direct questions. The questions were there, Ron, for sure, right?
Well, this is part of the dog and pony show. These guys know the answer to this, at least a lot more than they're willing to tell us. Every one of the specific questions that Mike Gallagher asked, the answers were very cleverly worded, and it's clear that these guys know this, and they're covering it up, but they're doing it in such a way where they don't have to actually lie per se, as to just be able to say it in such a way that they beat around the bush a little bit, they deflect a little bit, they put it in a certain box over here, and it's not in this box, and we can't really answer that because it's not in our wheelhouse. And it's just very interesting watching this. This whole thing was I won't say carefully choreographed, but this new dance, there's been a lot of people in a lot of back rooms having conversations about, what the music's going to be and what the steps are. I firmly believe that, because you cannot organically manufacture such clever deflection and ongoing deception spontaneously. This is the result of, okay, this is the next step in rolling this out according to our story that we've agreed to tell. What are we going to say, and how are we going to say it?
There was Representative Himes who really rubbed me the wrong way. And he literally brings up conspiracy theory. That's his words, right? And and he says he wants all of these conspiracy theories about UFOs and aliens and ET eliminated. And we're going to get to the censorship issue when we come back after the break. But how can you just eliminate a voice where people are bringing up these concerns? And I just found that from an elected official, do you really want to have that position?
Well, we're watching it unfold as we speak in somewhat slow motion. When Gallagher asked those questions and all of ufology went, yay, he's asking about the Wilson Davis memo, which may or may not be valid in any way, but he's asking about the nuke sites. He's asking about the materials. And we could go into this a little bit more. He's asking about contracts, civilian contracts to study back-engineered stuff that these guys both openly said do not exist. Well, we know some of them existed. We've seen the contracts. We've got the FOIA responses. So, they're asking these questions with the purpose of, let's get this stuff out of the way, even though a lot of it is really valid and an important part of the story. So they're eliminating the quote unquote conspiracy theories very cleverly through this process.
Is that, are we getting into a constitutional issue here where we're going to take a position from the government to not listen or not allow people to speak or ask questions?
I don't think it needs to be done that way. The whole suppression of UFO information has been very well managed, and it started off with the ridicule factor, which was at play through the military until the ATIP stuff, and really kept the military, the rank and file military from asking too many questions, because the orders from up top were, oh, don't do that, it'll ruin your career. But that policy in place that cascaded through the military and your average pilot and your average service person, that policy was being dictated by the people that really were managing this information, and that's how they very cleverly kept it kept the right people from asking too many questions. And now that's off the shelf. So now let's get rid of these conspiracy theories. So first I'll ask these questions about these things, and then we'll call them conspiracy theories, and then we'll come up with a bunch of reasons why they can't be true, and then we'll move on. And so this is the UFO topic, Jimmy, has been a constitutional crisis from the day that it was covered up the way it was. There's members of Congress that are supposedly by law allowed to have access to any classified information they want, and they're not getting it. And these guys, I can tell you, these guys on Capitol Hill, a lot of them know that they're not being told the truth, and they'll say that behind closed doors. But what's happening here?
But they're starting to say that publicly now.
Well, yeah,
they're starting to say that publicly, and
Tim Burchett is super loud.
Yeah, his reaction. We're going to head to a break here in 3 minutes. His post hearing reaction. Again, I'm paraphrasing, where he said, "This is a cover up by our own government, and it has to end now. The people need to know the truth." He's literally saying that it's a cover up by our own government, and I was totally surprised and shocked to have a representative like that speak so directly into the camera.
Yeah, and thank goodness we have people that are willing to be that bold, because it is, and they've heard enough behind closed doors. We could talk about like the materials thing when we come back. We know that they've been briefed about these things, and so when they asked about materials being back engineered and researched, and this guy's like, oh, we don't have anything like that. We're not aware of anything like that. We already know that Congress has been briefed. They've seen more than they can tell us, and they know that that's not true. The problem is that this thing has been so convoluted since they decided to keep the secret. It's been wrapped up in siloed programs and buried deep in different industrial aspects, plausible deniability, Escape from the Freedom of Information Act request, and then run by a whole lot of people. When I interviewed you for my movie, you said it better than anybody's ever said it. These people, you do not know who they are. You will never know who they are. You will never see their faces. You will never hear their voices. And those were your words to God's ears, Jimmy.
Did it make the final cut?
Yeah. I'll talk to you about what I took from our interview that I put in the film. It's nothing that's going to make you mad at me.
Well, that's interesting that you remembered that. I didn't remember it, but that is a point that I think is very, very important. That of course there are people in the know, but those people that are in the know, they're gonna take it to their grave. They are not going to go out and speak in public, and anybody that is out speaking in public about it probably doesn't know what they're talking about.
No, and none of these guys are going behind closed doors with Congress, because none of them are going to let Congress know.
Isn't that the point? Yeah, and so the frustration when Congress now, or it doesn't matter if it's the House of Representatives or the Senate and the Senate Intelligence Committee, that they're finding this stuff out in a roundabout way. They're having to go and chase this down. This information wasn't given to them, and now they're having to pull teeth. And they're experiencing what the UFO community has been experiencing for the last 70 years.
And from what I can tell, some of them want to go and pull those teeth, and we're encouraging them. We're literally telling them who to ask, where to look. And then some of them are like, we don't care. It's not that important. And some of them are actually interested in preserving and forwarding this new narrative. So it's very interesting that even when people know, they take a different approach to how they're going to personally handle it and what they feel their obligation is.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Ron James of MUFON. It is night 3 of our UFO hearing week right here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Rob when we come back after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and this year, June 18th, 2022, the Disclosure Fest Foundation presents the Mass Meditation Initiative. It's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., one day only at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event again this year with music performances by Trevor Hall, The Desert Dwellers, Poran Key, and many, many more on 4 separate stages. There's 16 stages in total, over 30 acres in downtown Los Angeles, with vendors and tents and presentations and workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many, many more. It's all simple to do. Just go to disclosurefest.org for all of your tickets, information, and a full schedule of the day's events. Again, disclosurefest.org. You want to be an official Fade or Not? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Fade or Nots. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, getting warmed up. Ron James is here. Great conversation. It's night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black, and Ron just brought up materials, and he brought up the Wilson Davis doc a few times tonight. So let's focus on that for a second. Gallagher brings up UFOs and Blue Book. And then he brings up Malmstrom, and then he brings up the Wilson Davis doc. And even I sat forward and went, he did he just go there? And of course had it brought into the public record, right? Evidence, right? Okay, so, but specifically the Wilson Davis doc, which is Dr. Eric Davis and his notes of a conversation with Rear Admiral Wilson in back of the EG&G building in Las Vegas, Nevada, right? Janet Airlines. Okay, so specifically, Eric Davis. Now, we are talking about hearings in right now with Congress. There may be hearings with the Senate. Dr. Eric Davis has a quote attributed to him in the New York Times saying that he briefed the Senate that we have craft in our possession, not from planet Earth. And it's also addressed in the Wilson Davis doc. Now, this question of materials has been lingering out there for a very long time. And if the Wilson Davis doc gets, it is now part of the public record. Does Davis get called to the Hill? Does he testify? Does he talk about these crashed retrievals, right? And these materials? And does this stuff start to get way out into the open. Okay, you're muted. Unmute yourself. I can't do it. You have to do it.
Well, I didn't even see that. Okay.
So
that document itself is controversial. We have both people that were supposedly involved in it, both still alive. Admiral Wilson obviously denies it because that's his job. It's literally part of somebody involved in intelligence to deny anything classified, so he has to. And then we have Eric Davis, who's been he won't talk about it or deny or confirm it at all, which I find very interesting. And then it was with Dr. Edgar Mitchell when it was discovered. So that's another interesting element, because the meeting with these guys was something that Wilson actually admits. So it's very convoluted, whether it's legitimate or not. But we do know that Eric Davis met behind closed doors and did talk about materials. He was part of the studies at Bigelow Aerospace that are now being denied. And we have the slide that he actually showed Congress. I went to New York and I sat down with Ralph Blumenthal from the New York Times for an hour and a half. He's in a movie talking about this whole thing about the materials and Bigelow Aerospace's involvement. And the whole thing is extremely convoluted. But we know the materials exist. We have a pretty good idea what they are, because there was a Freedom of Information Act request that not a lot of people know about, that was filed by a guy named Tony Bragalia, who manages to tick off half of the UFO field. So when he makes a big announcement, it's received lukewarm. But the fact is, the guy did a lot of work. And we have in our possession a Freedom of Information Act request that acknowledges that materials were studied at Bigelow Aerospace, acknowledges that they came from shot off UFO crash debris, flotsam stuff from crashed UAPs, and talks about what the materials are. And then we did a little more cross-referencing, and we found out some of the people that studied them through different paperwork. And we have all this, and it's in the film. But when he asked about that specifically, about materials, the answer was very interesting. We don't have any materials that can't be attested to terrestrial origin. That, again, is a very clever way of saying that, because Lou Elizondo said early on in private conversations with me, and maybe publicly, that it's not that these materials can't be identified, because they're from the periodic table. We know what they are. We know what they're made of. That's not the issue. The issue is, so he can say, yeah, they're terrestrial materials. The issue is the isotopic ratios of these that make them impossible to manufacture in ways that we know, and the combinations of elements and what they do. And then we also have reports about these materials, things like metallic glass and different materials that we can only speculate about their use in aerospace. We have reports about this. Now, who designs a material that we're going to spend a lot of money trying to figure out how to make it? It's a very complex manufacturing process. We might not even be able to do it. And then we're going to sit back now that we've made it, and we're going to scratch our heads and go, wow, what are we going to do with this? And that's what the information I'm sitting on conveys. So when they say, well, we have no materials that cannot be in alignment with a terrestrial origin, that is one of the most clever ways of dancing around the fact that surrounds these materials that I could possibly imagine. And so I can't go too deep into the material stuff tonight. It's a big part of my film, but I saw somebody in chat asking about Bigelow Aerospace and all these things. The meandering path to the truth about the study of UFO materials is the smoking gun. And short of laying a big piece of unidentifiable metal on the table of all our viewers, we're going to expose a lot of that path.
Well, okay, so just having the Wilson Davis doc brought into the public record, now what is in that document can be discussed. You know, whether it's been vetted, and whether Davis is going to say it was real and it's his document. I think that, you know, Baby Putoff and Kit Green have already alluded to that, but that's another story. The point is, now it can be talked about.
Yeah, and you know, Admiral Wilson can be taken into chamber and expected to answer the truth about that document, because he will be, you know, in a classified environment. So who knows if that's going to happen. Eric Davis obviously could be brought in. I think just the fact, I'm not going to speculate about the legitimacy of the documents because too many people are arguing about it. I noticed that one of our very luminous people in the field is saying that the Wilson Davis memo shouldn't even have been brought up and there's bigger fish to fry. And even Gallagher said, yeah, I brought it up so I could just get it out of the way. So let's hope that that's not what happens.
That was Gallagher backpedaling because
big time.
Because you look at the video, he was pissed off. Mm-hmm. What do you mean you don't know about the Wilson Davis? How can you not know about the Wilson Davis? What do you mean you don't know? And that was him on camera in session. So for him to say, no, it was I just brought it up just
the very next day. That's what he said. I was absolutely mind boggled.
Yeah. And he had the same attitude about Malmstrom.
Yeah.
Now, let's circle back to Malmstrom for a second. In that Gallagher bringing it up and watching Bray and Moultrie and their body language, because Bray goes, do you know about Malmstrom? No, I don't. Do you know about it was just so funny. We all can read people.
Yes, and that data is not at the UAP task force. I promise you, we're going to be hearing that skirt a lot. That's not within our purvey. It's over there. We don't know anything about it. But in my film, I've interviewed Colonel John Alexander 4 times over 12 years. And back when I interviewed him in 2009, he was saying things like, well, I really think that this topic needs to be brought out in the open so people can study it without ridicule, but I don't know anything about anything. Well, the last interview I shot with him, he admits to running an entire program under the radar with the help of all the alphabet soup agencies, and he comes and he says, and it's in my film, that they studied the heck out of the Maelstrom thing, and that they, at the end of the day, they couldn't really conclude what it was. But for these guys to even almost try to pretend like it doesn't exist or they don't know about it, there is mountains of data in these unacknowledged programs that are now, that we've managed to uncover some of them, that suggest that that's completely untrue. And they're skirting in the stuff that you pointed to, the body language and everything else. We don't need this. We just need some guys to sit down and tell us the truth.
I'm not a shock jock. I'm not about that. I don't give a crap. But I'll say this about John Alexander. Okay, I'll go on the record right now. We're talking to, he's standing next to me. And I'll just say, this was at Roswell. Okay. And I said, so John, would love to get you on Fade to Black or Coast to Coast. He goes, and talk about what, Jimmy? UFOs? And I go, yeah, I don't know anything about UFOs. I said, okay, well, we could talk about your life. There's nothing there, man. Nah, I don't know anything about UFOs. And there you go. I'm saying it on the pod, and I was like, really, dude? What? Okay, all right. Let's leave that right there. And
okay, so just a couple of fun facts about John Alexander.
Well, let's not take this too far in that direction. We're talking about the UFO hearing. We can do a John Alexander show later, though.
Well, he's this guy is going to emerge as one of the biggest figures behind the scenes in this field. There's these front-facing guys that have always said they're friendly to the field, Pope, Alexander, and now we have Elizondo and Mellon, that are basically I know stuff, but I can't tell you, and I hope that you're going to be okay with that, which is. It freaks me out that people are even willing to accept that at that level. But Alexander's story is very interesting. And in my film, we're going to learn some stuff about this guy that I promise you is going to blow your mind.
Well, okay. Let's talk about that then, because there is a tie into the UFO hearing when it comes to Alexander.
Well, there is, yeah.
Okay. I would love to hear yours. This is mine. Is John Alexander relevant today? Is he relevant today? Was he okay? I'm not talking about 30 years ago. I'm talking about right now in 2022. Is anybody listening to John Alexander? Is he on some committee? Is he going to be called to testify? My answer to that is no. His information is 30 years old. Is it cool? Sure. Is it relevant today? I'm not so sure that he's somebody that you invite to the party. There's nothing that he can bring.
Well, there's a few reasons he's relevant, and one of them is that as we try to establish the fact that there is this big lie of ufology, this gap between Blue Book and and ATIP, sure. John Alexander is a central figure in filling that gap. This is the guy that knows where the information is, and so if we're willing to accept the whitewashing of these programs, then yes, him and his contributions can just be part of what gets relegated to the basement. But if you really want to know what went on between then and now, he knows a lot. He won't tell you a lot, but he was part of it. And many paths to figuring out that mystery lie with what John Alexander will tell you, but even more, they lie with the things that he won't tell you.
Now, talking about the cover-up, the hearing took a very strange turn. And for me, when LaHood, Representative LaHood, literally said that he wants to talk about those amateur UFO groups. Now, and in my opinion, this is my opinion, I would love yours, I think he was taking a crack at MUFON. And he says that these amateur UFO groups that are putting out bad information, and he said misinformation, he said disinformation, and then he called for deterrence with this activity. Now that's censorship right there. Once he taking a crack at MUFON and by saying that they wanted deterrence over this misinformation and disinformation is censorship.
You're going to laugh at me and maybe some of the audience too. I don't think he was talking about MUFON, because MUFON has never been a source of disinformation. All we do is take reports from around the world and publish them. Very rarely are we publishing things that are not the results of scientific studies or case reports that are evaluated on an unbiased basis. We don't put out our opinion of stuff. In fact, a lot of the things that I've said tonight are my own personal opinion as an investigator in a field and a filmmaker.
I agree with you. I need to interrupt. I'm not saying that what LaHood said was correct. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is he implied, when you say amateur UFO group, there's only one UFO group. There's only one. It's MUFON, and we all know that. And that I think.
Well, I like that. Say that again. Can you say that louder? Can we put it on the website?
Look, I'm not dumb, And so when I hear that, I just thought to myself, he is misinformed. He's speaking from information that was whispered in his ear, and he wants to control the narrative and have his cognitive dissonant blinders on, and he doesn't want to listen to anything else.
Well, luckily, Jimmy, MUFON is in Washington, D.C., talking to these people, and we're actually being very well received, and our credibility is above a lot. And I think they're referring to some of these other organizations that are saying things that, we're just based on, we repeat reports, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of groups that are out there that, and you can define them as groups, rather they're websites of publishers or groups with putting on different types of symposiums, so that defining groups doesn't have to be just MUFON as an organization or any organization. And I have a feeling I know who he's talking about specifically. I'm not going to say, because I'll get myself in a whole lot of trouble, but MUFON's been very well accepted in these circles, and because they respect us as an organization. But the idea that there should be penalties for free speech, I mean, this is just something that's running rampant in the country, and it's not just in ufology. And for anybody to say that there needs to be repercussions for repeating information that may or may not be true about the UFO field, that's genuinely scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really freaked me out. And using a word like deterrence in session, right? In session. What kind of world does he want this to be?
Well, the kind where you can't say the word war or you go to jail for 15 years.
Yeah, right.
It's getting that's getting into the whole political stuff that's just getting more and more scary all over the world.
There was for me now, if there was a highlight in the entire hearing, and my new hero is Representative Welch. Now, people are talking about Burchett, and they want to talk about Gallagher. Representative Welch literally said the universe. He goes, man, the universe is a big place. There's a lot of life out there. When are we going to talk about ET and extraterrestrials visiting this planet? And then you watched Bray and Moultrie wiggle, right? And their answer and the way that they tried to, and Welsh came back with, and I'm paraphrasing, okay, you don't want to talk about that now? Are we going to talk about ET and extraterrestrials in the classified section of this hearing later on this afternoon? And Moultrie answers with, well, we're working with NASA about ET, and we are looking for life out there. And I thought that was, again, pretty interesting, but Welsh turned this hearing back on track. Ron.
Yes.
Stay out of the chat room. Turn it off. Turn it off. We're doing it. This is a show. We're live on the air.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to interact with the audience who keeps asking me questions on the side.
Don't worry about the audience. That's a distraction.
Love you guys.
They let them do their own thing. It's going to be 2,000 posts there. Okay. So what was my question?
Just now.
No, yeah. What? See, stay out of the chat room.
But you got through half the question.
Ron, Representative Welsh brought up ETs and extraterrestrials and whether it was going to be addressed in the classified briefing. And he turned the hearing around on that point. I thought it was the most important point of the entire hearing. What did you think of Representative Welsh's question about ET and extraterrestrials?
Well, I think that when they're behind closed doors, they're not going to get too much more information than they got in front of people. You can tell that they haven't been getting that information because there's still too many of them that are on the fence. I know that when we've been in DC having these conversations, there are literally people on these committees and staffers that say that they are underwhelmed and unconvinced by what they've seen. So the idea that after this thing, everybody went into the little private soiree and ET was revealed, I don't think that happened or has happened really, which is disappointing. So the fact that they're asking those questions is great, but the fact that we're dealing with people that are still not going to reveal it, or maybe it hasn't even been revealed to them or somewhere in between is a little bit disappointing.
Well, okay. So you brought up Crawford early on, and it was right after Welch asked about the classified briefing later, and they would stay out of the chat room, Ron. I'm watching. I
blocked it. I'm not even there. I'm looking at my notes.
The chat room. That chat room, you have no idea what you're opening up. That's a can of worms you don't want to jump into. And so Crawford later, after Welch, Crawford comes back with, and this is what impressed me about Crawford, right? He's not that bad of a guy, because he asked if they had any evidence about anything not being from this planet. That was Crawford, and he went there. Bray responded with, well, they have examples of things that they cannot explain. Now, this is very good, and this will lead to the next hearing. This conversation can continue, Ron.
It can, but see, the way it's going to continue, Jimmy, is that everything is going to be put into the box or the stovepipe of the UAP task force. So in other words, the stuff that they've been tasked with investigating and the results of their investigation is all the things that are going to go in this box. They're not going to be able to go, hey, that black office at the Pentagon way down deep where those guys are rumored to have all this information. Can you guys just give us access to that so that we can take it out of your files and put it into our UAP task force box where we can then share it with everybody? That's not going to happen. So these new agencies and groups have been created to basically take care of the box. So yeah, they're going to.
How do we fix it?
We have to get really aggressive politicians that are not going to take no for an answer. And, we don't have a lot of those. There's some, but at the end of the day, there could be a really good reason that this is being kept a secret that goes way beyond the stuff that we think. Are they covering up technology they don't want to share, blah, 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 blah. What if it's just a really kind of unpleasant situation, and the mass realization of our place in the universe is not really anything that's going to benefit humanity? And the more I delve into this, the more I'm coming to the conclusion that there's an aspect of that to this, to this secrecy and this demand for secrecy and this major motions that they've gone through for years and years and years to keep it a secret. It's not all nefarious. There is probably a very good reason at play as well, and there's a big possibility that reason is something we do not want to know, unfortunately.
In reference to what?
In reference to our actual role in the food chain, so to speak, not necessarily food, but, just what we are, why we're here, and what we are to the whole broader scheme of our place in the galaxy.
But isn't that a conversation that needs to happen in a public forum? I mean, I feel that the opposite is true, and that we do need to have these conversations and not not shut it down. I'm a little confused here.
Well, there's obviously people that have decided to manage this information for whatever reason that haven't shared it with us. And all I'm saying is that maybe there's a reason that they haven't, that's not as good as we think. We have this idea of extraterrestrials, and it's all like, well, maybe we're being nurtured for one day we can be part of a galactic federation or whatever. But what if that's not it? There's all kinds of speculation out there, and it's only speculation. Maybe we're cattle of some kind. Maybe we're property. Maybe this whole planet is a genetic farm. Who knows? But people always ask me if humanity is ready for disclosure. And the answer that I have evolved over time here is that it depends on what the context of disclosure is. It's going to make all the difference. If disclosure is there's extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, there's all manner of other life forms coming from all manners of places that we can't even imagine. They represent no danger to us. We're a part of it, and we're just evolving with the ecosystem. Then that's great. Everybody goes, cool, that's fantastic. And they go back to their lives and they study it deeper if they want. But what if the answer is, we are a completely subjugated race. We're being overseen by all kinds of different forces in the universe that we have no control over. We are not this kind of evolved species that we think we are, and there is no real future for humanity anywhere. We're just being used for whatever purpose by beings that we have no power over. Well, now that disclosure changes the entire paradigm of humanity, and nobody goes back to their day-to-day. They go into panic mode, personal despair, and we have the complete de-evolution of our civilization. So disclosure and the public reaction to it is subjective to what that disclosure is and what it tells us about how we fit into the big picture. And so I'm not saying that any of these things are something that I believe or are possible. Well, they're possible. But what I am saying is that there's a lot of different angles to look at this from, even about where these things are from. Are they interdimensional? Are they traveling through time? Are they coming from another planet? Are they inside the Earth? Or all of the above, plus a bunch of things that we don't even understand yet.
Sure. And I think I've got to take a break in 15 seconds. I think that the planet's response to everything that you just said is, yeah, so of course we're not the smartest people in the neighborhood. Of course there's more advanced things out there than us. Of course there's things that we don't understand. Of course we could be under some kind of control. But there's probably 10,000 different races that are visiting this planet, and it's out of our control. What's the big surprise here? And I don't think we would collapse and that we would lose our minds if we thought that, no, we all have pets that we control. Right?
Yeah, but do you want to be a pet? I mean, I argue in my film that we're all these spiritual creatures having a human experience, and many of us, the people that you're referring to, are the ones that are so stuck in this day to day, going through the motions of working their jobs and paying their bills and living here in this physical reality. But the people that are paying a whole lot of attention to, what am I really? Why am I really here? What is the core of my existence? And what happens after I'm not here anymore? The people that are paying that kind of attention to their existence here, it's a little different subset. And those people, this information is vital to them understanding their journey. And depending on the nature of that information is going to define how they interpret their journey. So we're talking about two different kinds of people and all those in between. But there's a lot of people that do care and that this would mean a lot to, and the implications would change the way they perceive themselves and live their lives. And then you're right. There's a whole lot of other people that, they don't really care. And there's nothing wrong with being in either subset. I'm a big fan of, you're here to be a human on planet Earth. Embrace it, do it, because someday you're going to be done. So there's two different ways to look at it. But I do think that the implications of it really do affect the reaction. So we're kind of close, but not really on that.
Okay, let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Ron James of MUFON, is with us. It is night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, VX.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and this year, June 18th, 2022, the Disclosure Fest Foundation presents the Mass Meditation Initiative. It's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., one day only at the Los Angeles State Historic Park in downtown Los Angeles, California, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event again this year with music performances by Trevor Hall, The Desert Dwellers, Poran Key, and many, many more on 4 separate stages. There's 16 stages in total, over 30 acres in downtown Los Angeles, with vendors and tents and presentations and workshops with Billy Carson, Adam Apollo, Lori Spagna, Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many, many more. It's all simple to do. Just go to disclosurefest.org for all of your tickets, information, and a full schedule of the day's events. Again, disclosurefest.org.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Great conversation tonight. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Ron James of MUFON. Ron has been investigating the subject from every angle for many, many years. And I remember, we're going to continue on here, Ron. I remember when we first met, it was probably 8 or 9 years ago now. And I went up, you may remember this, it doesn't even matter. But I went up and I looked at, you had all of your TV shows and DVDs laid out and your movies. And I was like, holy crap. You've been doing it. And it was just so funny. You go, man, you have no idea, Church. And I was very impressed. And your stuff and how much of it is out there. And you've been doing everything to get this out into the public for a very long time. You've been fighting the good fight. So thank you for that. Now, I want to get back to your point. The threat narrative, which was brought up by the media and the Department of Defense for the last 4 years, and specifically talking about the Tic Tac entering our airspace and with impunity and doing whatever they wanted. I would say this is my response to that. I've got a Roomba. Okay. And that Roomba does whatever it wants. Does whatever it wants, man. And when it encounters the leg of a chair, it moves. Doesn't want to hit it. A wall, it avoids it. And if the Tic Tac was extraterrestrial, it exhibited the same traits. It has been programmed to avoid issues, like my Roomba. And it avoided Fravor, right? It didn't shoot at Fravor. And if my Roomba turns around and takes a shot at me in my house, well, then my Roomba's a threat. But it didn't take a shot at Fravor. It avoided Fravor. Like so many other objects that we have all witnessed and seen and documented, I have yet to see a plasma weapon used on downtown Los Angeles. I haven't seen that yet. So the threat narrative that these things pose a threat, they avoid us, but I don't see that as being a threat. And that is always going to be my position until I have evidence of something else going on, Ron.
I'm sorry, I got kind of taken away by that. I just have this image in my mind of you walking into your living room and there's the Roomba and you're about to step on it and it blasts 80,000 feet and it goes through your roof, comes back down. That might be a threat. But no, I'm not a fan of the threat narrative. I think that it was useful in getting the attention of Congress because if you go in and it's just, hey, this is a bunch of people seeing stuff and it's the tinfoil hat crowd, yeah, they're not going to listen. And Chris Mellon, in a private interview that will be in my film, we discussed this at length. And you know, it's having that threat narrative came in handy, but you're right. There's no evidence that we know of that these things pose a threat. And I think that the threat narrative, there's people that say it never should have been a part of it all along. And there's an argument for that. And there's an argument that the threat narrative served its purpose. So it's an interesting thing, but I don't think the threat narrative is a healthy narrative to continue to embrace. I think it might be dangerous to go down that road.
Yeah, and you know how we are as humans. You know, we shoot first. That's what we do. Yeah, and I don't think that's a good approach to start shooting at things that are way beyond our knowledge base. I think that's a wise move. Now, what do you see playing out? We're going to have. I'm telling you right now, we're going to have multiple hearings this year in 2022. Who do you want to see next as witnesses?
Well, I think that all the front-facing guys right now should be next. I think that Lou should get his chance to sit and say what he can say. I think that Chris Mellon, who's been very instrumental in walking a tightrope, should have the chance to say what he knows. And then I think that we should get a lot of these guys that were hidden within Bigelow and Bass. I think Robert Bigelow would be an amazing witness. I think that the people that were within his organization, a lot of who we know, I'd like to see Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, These are the guys, the people that came out of NIDS into BASS and later into ATIP, many of whom we don't know. These are the guys we need to hear from. And then I'd like to see some of the older folks inside the Pentagon and some of these head guys inside Skunk Works and everything else. Not necessarily in public hearings. There's no place for that. But I'd like to see them talking to Congress about what's really going on behind those closed doors, as far as back engineering and everything else.
Now, what about? I'm very interested in other civilian cases like Japan Airlines. You know, you have Callahan from the FAA. You have the original pilot that was given a desk job after that incident in Alaska. You have John Burroughs, Jim Peniston, Colonel Halt, and the Rendlesham case. That's another military case that is well documented. I think that they should come forward. I think Robert Salas should be brought forward to testify about Malmstrom now that it is part of the public record in a hearing. And I think some others like Richard Dolan, I think should be brought up, and not only with his knowledge base, but what disclosure means to the world. And
we've been suggesting behind closed doors that everybody required reading should be the UFOs in the National Security State series, because it's one of the best historical references that really covers a lot of stuff. And Richard's just, there's nobody else like him. But you mentioned all these things. What would really be interesting is the people behind that. I just interviewed Bob Salas about this. Now, there's guys. These are the witnesses, the forward-facing guys that saw this stuff. But what about the guys that came to Rendlesham and took the data? What about who landed that helicopter on the Princeton? Those are the people I want to know about.
Right.
It's like we have all these witnesses, but what we don't have is what happened to that stuff. Rumor has it that Kit Green was involved in Rendlesham. This is something that I was told. I don't know if it's true, but that he was involved in collecting that data there way back when. And it was either that or at the nuclear plants. But we have these guys that are not necessarily the witnesses that have been luminaries of ufology. We have the people behind them that are the ones that operated in the shadows around them. It would be really good if we could get Charles Halt to identify, okay, well, who was these guys that came to Rendlesham and took the stuff, took the data, took the medical records. And these guys, these front-facing people, they know some of them. And that would be the people that really we want to know. And that's the direction that in these private meetings we're kind of pointing Congress is like, let's look at Bill Richardson. Bill Richardson, New Mexico governor.
Good point.
He was given the Department of Energy. Well, we now know that the Department of Energy is actually a place where a whole bunch of stuff can be stuck and classified that the DOD can't get to, and the Freedom of Information Act requests people don't even know how to go to the DOD. So Bill Richardson comes out and says, I think people could accept the truth about what happened to Roswell. And then all of a sudden, Bill Richardson's running the Department of Energy. So here's a guy that's publicly alluded to Roswell being a real thing. And now he's in charge of one of the most, well, not now, but then, in charge of one of the most secretive, clandestine organizations that nobody knows is that way. And he's running it. So, Bill, come on in. We got some questions for you.
Now, what about, I brought this up last night with Sean Cahill, and who was part of the battle group, right? Okay, so he was the sheriff, by the way. That was his gig. He was the law enforcement chief officer of the battle group. Okay, so here we go with not only with the focus now with the UAP task force, and we have this date, 2004 and forward. The task force report last year completely pointed that out. Mm-hmm. So we know that we have the specific date and incident with the Tic Tac and the Nimitz and the Princeton and the rest of the battle group.
Sure.
Well, then if that is the case, then why are we not hearing from Rear Admiral Curtis and Rear Admiral Daly, that were both the commanders of that battle group, what they knew, what happened with the reports, who did the debriefing, What was the follow-up, and where did the information go? The helicopter that landed on the Princeton, that's another example of this.
Took the deck logs.
Not only the deck logs, but all of the computer data as well. So now, shouldn't in the next hearing, shouldn't we have Curtis and Daly sitting there and answer? If they want to focus on the Nimitz at 2004, well, then let's talk to the two rear admirals that were in charge of the battle group.
So, that's a very good question. And as an investigative group, which, the intelligence committees should be, you would think that would be the logical conclusion. So the question is, well, why isn't it? And you and me, Jimmy, we're never going to get these guys on our shows or in front of our cameras. They're never going to talk to us. Would they talk to those groups? Only if they were asked. How many people know in the world, as far as how this is being laid out? We've got our listeners, our 40,000 core worldwide UFO community that pays attention to this stuff, but nobody knows to ask these people. Nobody knows to demand that these people get asked. And the people who do know have hardly any voice. So who is going to tell these guys that's where you look? That's where you're going to find the answers. And how much are they going to say, oh, really? Okay, I'm going to do that. And so we're in a situation where it's going to be very difficult to get that done, and we're trying, believe me, because these are exactly the questions that they need to be asking, because that's where they're going to find the answers. But they need to know. It's like somebody said that I interviewed for the film. We're not at the stage of asking the right questions yet. And what we're really trying to do to help nurture this political process along is get these guys to the stage of asking the right questions of the right people. And everything you brought up is fits right in with that.
Now, what about Chad Underwood? David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, bringing those three pilots forward that have already gone on the record in public, and multiple times in the media, and of course. 60 Minutes, sit down and answer some serious questions. Shouldn't they be in the next hearing too as well, in addition to the two rear admirals?
I'm sure that those guys are going to be in hearings at some point, but I think that they've already told us a lot of what they know. I think that maybe Fravor's knowledge of what he's willing to say and what he's able to say, we might have heard a lot of it already, because those guys.
It's another thing in a public hearing on Capitol Hill under oath.
Well, I have no doubt that those guys will be included. I think that we're going to see a steady string of front-facing military witnesses. Obviously, we're going to see the Fravors. We're going to see these guys coming out, and hopefully Lou can get in there and be allowed to say some things. I know Danny Sheehan is fighting with Lou inside the DIA, trying to set a precedent for things to be said. And this is a very interesting thing that's going on behind the scenes that not a lot of people know about. You probably do. Yeah, we're going to see these guys. It's probably going to be the next round of people is the front-facing folks from the ATIP program that have already made the rounds. But are we going to get the admirals back there, the guys that were behind the scenes? Are we going to ever even find out who ordered that helicopter to land and take that data and where it went? And that's the real challenge. We've already, us and the public and everybody else, we already know, and it's all public knowledge. We might see it in hearings, but that's not going to be anything new. To sit down with the high command of the fleet at the time and get to the bottom of what was going on from an operational standpoint and how could this be so coordinated that you guys could land on this thing with a clandestine helicopter, know exactly what it is you're trying to get and take it, and where was this authorized? We have all these facts and we have an idea who would be able to enlighten us, but getting that to actually happen in any environment is like pulling teeth, because in a big way, the hearings are a dog and pony show for the public. Now, I'm not saying that they're not valid, and I'm not saying that they're not helpful, but the people that understand the real questions and what to ask, we're not getting anywhere with this.
I don't get the dog and pony show vibe. Not yet. I don't get it yet. I think that was an extraordinary step forward last Tuesday. I think it was huge, and it's worth repeating before I get to my next question. For the first time, not 54 years ago, ever has Roswell, Malmstrom, Wilson Davis, ET, Contact, flying saucers have been talked about in a public hearing, in a public session, in a public hearing on Capitol Hill. It's never happened.
Well, that's not exactly true. I mean, you mentioned these specific incidents.
No,
we had the Robertson panel. We had Gerald Ford requested hearings.
But that was dog and pony. That was dog and pony. There's no question about that.
They talked about Roswell. They talked about the.
They didn't talk about Roswell. Roswell wasn't part of the public record in the Robertson panel.
They talked about the implications of the societal release of the information.
Nobody knew about Roswell. Roswell wasn't part of Blue Book. Nobody knew about Roswell until 1980. So
they broke it, yes. But they talked about the stuff that was in Blue Book, and they talked about all these things. We have had these hearings, and if you go back and you look at what General Samford said, and I think it was back in the 1950s, I have a clip that we made actually to show Congress. He says, we have these observances of these objects doing incredible things that we're not capable of, and they're not from our inventory. Then we have verbatim, almost like nobody even had to rewrite the script. These guys are saying that now. Then we have Samford saying that we, as the Air Force, newly constituted after the Roswell years, believe that we have an obligation to the public to find out what these things are and to get to the bottom of what they are and whether or not they pose a threat. And then we go to Moultrie's opening statements, where he says basically the same thing. We feel like we have an obligation to the public to find out what these things are and if they pose a threat. And it's like, if you wrote a Hollywood script and you sent it to be rewritten, the guy doing the rewriting didn't even have to do much work.
Yeah,
so
you're
we're
right.
being told the same exact story, almost verbatim, about the same kind of craft doing the same kind of thing that goes back 70 years now. So when I say dog and pony show, I'm not trying to criticize for the general public what's going on here, but for the people that really know what's going on and can read between the lines and understand, and there's not that many of them on the planet because most people do not care about this topic the way the hardcore folks do. But for all of us who are watching this unfold, it is absolutely designed for public release. And so when we call it a dog and pony show, maybe I'm being overly critical, but it is not something that's satisfying those who really know and understand the truth and understand how important it is that we get it.
Yeah, well, okay. So, and you're 100% correct. I absolutely enjoyed that statement. But here's the deal. MUFON is sitting on a collection of evidence that is probably as big as any other organization on this planet, with investigations, sightings, evidence, videos, eyewitness testimony, photographs, images, and the scientific data that possibly backs up some of these cases and investigations. Would MUFON be willing to remember? I was a talking head on Hangar One, right?
Sure.
The MUFON TV show, and I know that there's a lot of files there. Would MUFON be willing to go through and pick some stuff out and present that to the House of Representatives or the Senate Intelligence Committee, if so asked?
That you just asked me a really tough question. I can tell you that process is MUFON would be willing to, and maybe they already are.
What cases, Ron?
I can't talk about that. But all I can say about this is that there is an open dialogue. MUFON has a seat at the table, and we don't want to disrupt that relationship, but we also are not going to be all cloak and dagger about it either. But we have to be careful. But yes, we have been invited into the room, and yes, we are sharing our information, and we're using, it's like I said before, these guys need to be told where to look and what to ask. And it's not that MUFON knows this where everybody else doesn't. Richard Dolan is a classic example of a guy who could sit in that room and tell these guys where to look and who to ask.
Sure.
And I hope he gets a seat at the table too. But we've got a seat at the table, and we're telling him where to look and who to ask. And it's nothing clandestine or secret or anything else. But yeah, we're serving our community, doing what we're supposed to do, and we're not going to like hand over the database to be scrutinized by people that don't control it. But we are offering as much access to our information to anybody within these circles that wants it, and we've got some takers. I think I can say that without getting myself in too much trouble.
How do you? I appreciate that, and thank you. How do you deal with the anonymous part of the MUFON reporting and witnesses? If you were if you were asked to present some evidence, how do you deal with that with members of the public that wanted to remain anonymous?
Yeah, MUFON's been paying a lot of attention to that lately because it's a big deal. Protecting the privacy of people that have given us information is paramount, especially people in the experiencer field. We can't divulge that kind of stuff. But as far as general data, photographs, witness testimony, we can convey the nuts and bolts important information from any case from our database without compromising the privacy of the people that provided it to us. And that is something, I'm glad you brought it up, because I'd like to reassure everybody, protecting the privacy of all of the people that come to MUFON is something that we agree to do, and that is very important to us. And one of the things that we've added to our whole case processing process is options for people to decide, is it okay if we share this video, because technically you're the copyright holder? Can we share it with people? Can we not? We can always share it privately, but sometimes people give us the rights to, let it go on Ancient Aliens or something. But we never will hand over a name, address, and phone number of a witness.
Let's take our break, Ron. We're going to go into overtime. You stay right there. This is Fade to Black. It is night 3 of our UFO hearing week here on Fade to Black. Great conversation tonight. And let me tell you something. Ron, James, and I, this conversation right now is nothing. Oh, Ron and I, we've done this over the years. He is the absolute best. Ron, you stay right there. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Be right back after this short break.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Billy Carson, founder and CEO of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv is the fastest growing and one of the most watched networks in the world. And I would like to personally invite you to check out our expanding library of TV, film, lectures, and special presentations. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv has over 6,000 videos covering lost history, health, UFOs, spirituality, and our future. We are committed to our community, and with my personal invitation, you can right now get your own free 30-day membership at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Your own library of information starts today at ForbiddenKnowledge.tv.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? Unex Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black Blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, and I was walking around the studio, and I literally have an Adidas tracksuit on. I got Adidas pants, Adidas shirt, look, and Adidas flip-flops. And I'm like, man, who am I representing? I went to the store today dressed like this. And I'm a grown-ass man. I'm 58 years old, walking around the supermarket dressed like I'm 16 years old. And there you go. Hey, Ron, we're in overtime. Great conversation tonight. I like to open things up a little bit and have a little fun and loosen up.
I know. I'm like, come on, Jimmy. This is a show. I was going to put on a suit and tie.
Right. And I wanted to say this, though. This is for the audience. Ron and I, we chatted. I'm going to say this is about a month ago, Ron. I'm not too sure. But we got into a little bit of a guitar conversation.
We did.
And friggin' Ron text me this picture. I'm not going to say specifically, Ron. I'm not going to get into that. But he sends me a picture of a guitar that I have lusted over for a long time. And he goes, "Do you know what this is?" And I was like, "What?" And I texted him back. I said, "Is that a?" And he said, "Yep." And I said, and he's like, "Yep." Ron, I didn't know you had it in you. You and I have talked guitars for 10 years. I don't want to say that we haven't, but that specific guitar, that's, you're not in one of a kind realm, but you're pretty close. You take this pretty serious, man. And that really impressed me.
Well, it's funny, Jimmy. When I was a kid, I was convinced I was going to grow up and be a rock star, and then I had a lot of things sidetrack me. But when COVID hit, I picked the guitar back up, started taking guitar and voice lessons, and now just the other night I went out and performed for the first time. And so I'm just like, wow, this is pretty cool. But I've always been a poet and a songwriter and a writer and all those artistic things. People just see me doing my shows and stuff, and they think I'm a talking head. But at the end of the day, I'm an artist at heart, and so are you. And like, remember when we did the interview in Laughlin? I actually brought a guitar. I was trying to get you to play it, but you did pick it up and strum it around a bit.
I did. I remember that. Ron's been trying to get me to do this for a long time.
Yeah, I have. I've got a song I want you to be in a music video with for me.
All right. We'll do the big reveal and get that done. Now, speaking of all of this, I have a way of segueing all of this conversation. And I want to swing this back around to video with the UFO hearing. Now, you this is what you do. You've got a studio, you've got cameras, you've been interviewing and editing and films and video and film is what you do. This is what you do. And when they whipped out that iPhone video at the hearing, you are the one guy that's going to have a very strong opinion. What went through your mind? Was that the right video at the right time?
Well, I mean, it depends what the agenda is. It's like if somebody said, hey, let's get the worst, most ambiguous video that makes the Tic Tac things look like revelations of works of art, they succeeded. I didn't even know pilots could take their phones on their planes. I mean, isn't that kind of like a security risk? But at any rate, yeah, that wasn't impressive. We know for a fact that they've got dozens of videos, some of them 20 minutes long. You and I have had conversations with people that have seen these videos. They could have done a little better.
We've all seen, like LA Law, right? We've all seen courtroom presentations. We've seen the Watergate hearings. We've seen Howard Hughes, get up in front of the Senate. We've seen what goes on in chamber. We know this, right? And what happens? You have an easel, you bring up your video stills, you're putting your foam core poster, your photographs, and you line up 6 or 8 of them, the freeze frame. You have your slow motion shots, you have your analysis, you have your enlargements, right? You come prepared. They didn't do any of that, Ron.
No, and they didn't even have the tech ready to go. The only thing that I can think that was worse delivered than what we saw during that brief rollout was how we started the show tonight, which kind of proves that us video professionals don't always have it together. But yeah, that was kind of weird. And, at the end of the day, it was an anticlimactic video that was probably the worst they had to offer. And it just kind of goes in line with, are they really trying to tell us something and share stuff, or are they just trying to give us the minimum they possibly can?
Did you? I'm going to tell you what I did, and I can show you right here. So I've got the big screen, going down, and I am grabbing shots in real time of what was going on the screen, and as I am shooting this. Let me back up here. As I am shooting this, and I'm wondering, I'm shooting their video, right? So I could freeze frame it later. I then took still shots of Adam Schiff going, what am I looking at? That's Adam Schiff. What am I looking at? Am I looking at that? Well, and that's what I did. I tried to prepare myself and go back and look at this. Now, this object didn't look like a balloon. It looked strange to me when I got that one freeze frame, the best that I could do with my cell phone, off of the screen from the hearing. That object looked funny to me. It didn't look normal. Did you look at it?
Well, the frame itself is shot low resolution, high speed, could be anything. It could be a Mylar balloon. It could be a Foo Fighter. I mean, it's really funny is that all the way back to World War II, we've had these things doing these things outside of our planes. And so, that thing didn't really move the ball forward for any of us. And it could be anything.
Here's, let me see here if I can, I've got my, is it, can you see that? No, why isn't this showing up on the camera? Okay, I've got an enlargement here, and it looks funky to me. It looks funky, and I think that the representatives there, if they would have been effective, and I'm talking about Bray, with being prepared, that maybe these representatives would have seen something pretty interesting.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they would have blown them up and presented them like you said. But yeah, it was haphazard. But I think that plays into the kind of agenda for how this is going to roll out. They don't seem to want to go the extra mile. They want to seem to answer the questions as ambiguously and wordsmithingly, if that's a word, as possible. And they're basically they're not. Nobody is aggressively wanting to deliver the truth. They're all being held back, probably because they've been pulled into a room and told why, or that's the line that they're going to have to toe. But so when I say dog and pony show, it's like I'm not trying to denigrate it in any way, but it's there wasn't anybody in that room that wants the truth as much as you and me.
Now, what do you think went down? I know that you have to speak in hypotheticals here, but what do you think went down in the briefing? The briefing probably wasn't about drones, I would suspect. What do you think went down in the classified section of this hearing?
Boy, wouldn't it be fun to be a fly on the wall for that? I would imagine that the admission of off-world craft, because we have a lot of evidence that Congress has already been told of the existence of off-world craft. So I bet in the classified briefing it was probably more of, look, guys, here's the game plan. This is what we're willing to tell you. We've established the UAP task force, but the biggest thing that the UAP task force has to do is figure out how we're going to reveal stuff to the public. That's our task. And so here's what we've come up with. Here's our talking points.
Right.
Here's our stuff. You know it. We know you know it. We know that you know that we know you know it. So, that's not even a factor anymore. Of course, there's some kind of unknown intelligence operating these things. That's not the question. The question is, how are we going to get it to the public in such a way that nobody has to take accountability for anything moving up to this point? And this is what we suggest. And so I think it was a nice little coalescence of the UAP task force and the Congress and a strategy session, because I think that behind a lot of closed doors, obviously not all of them, because some of these guys are either really good actors or they truly don't know. I can't imagine, what was his name, Crawford or Rick Crawford and the other guys that came out asking these questions. If they really know that there's this ET or non-human intelligent presence, then they really played it well. So some people know, some people don't, some people don't want to know. But I think it was just as much a strategy session as a revelation session.
Now, let's take things to the next level and talk about Avi Loeb and the Galileo Project, which certainly plays into everything that is going on. If we go back historically to 2017, people want to talk about the New York Times article in December. Well, in October, Tom DeLonge, as you know, did his live press conference announcing stock for sale with TTSA. But there was another important event in October, too, which was Oumuamua.
Right.
And so all of this stuff is happening at the same time. And now, as we've moved along through this, Avi Loeb has been very public about Oumuamua. He's released his book, Extraterrestrial, and now he's put together the Galileo Project with astronomers and astrophysicists around the world looking for the scientific data backing up what is being seen in our atmosphere.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't know is that these meetings were taking place a long time before Galileo was announced. The Elizondos and the Mellons and the Avi Loebs were all having conversations, and funding was coming into this thing. At the same time, TTSA was in play. So there's a lot of people that say this is all a very organized rollout, being governed at the deepest levels by those we'll never know, and all the players are playing their part. And then there's people that say, oh, that's preposterous. This all happened very organically. It couldn't have happened organically. You couldn't have had Lou Elizondo tending his resignation, and then all of a sudden the TTSA just materializes in a couple of months. Lou Elizondo, I believe, tended his resignation because he knew that the TTSA was about to pop out. They were going to be the commercial version of controlling and distributing the new narrative, and he was a part of it. And this was all orchestrated. How deep it goes, we don't know. And we can't prove it, and a lot of people say it doesn't go that deep. But clearly, all of these people were talking. The Galileo Project was in play, funding for the Galileo Project. We looked into who funded it. So it's a very interesting situation. But this was all being planned, and this rollout was way more organized than people think, but it might not be as organized as some people think, if that makes sense. But it's all intertwined, interconnected, and there's a lot of backroom meetings that were happening to create the appearance of spontaneity.
Do you think Avi Loeb will be testifying?
I'm not sure he has anything to testify about. You know, he's got a theory that the asteroid was a UFO, but he doesn't have any, you know, proof of that. He's got conjecture. His testimony it would be speculation at best.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily just be about Oumuamua.
Yeah.
It would be about his approach of detecting UAPs in our atmosphere and the ongoing search for that and what data he has collected up to this point.
Well, I'm sure that within Galileo, there's a lot of things that well, obviously we know there's a lot of things they already know. There's probably a lot of more things they're finding out. So at some point when they've got something to share, possibly, the list of potential witnesses that can contribute, it would be fun to make a list of all of them. Like you had made a bunch. I had some. I'm sure the audience has a bunch, and really start drilling down into, well, if you could only do 10 or 20, who would they be? Because that ultimately is probably, you know, we're not going to have hundreds of people parading in front of Congress over years and years. The hearing thing is going to be a thing that happens, and then it's over, and maybe the whole thing dies down. We don't know. But
well, okay. Now,
we're not going to hear from everybody on the steps of Congress.
There's going to be so many hearings. There's going to be subcommittees. There's going to be different branches of this. There will be the physics side, the science side, the astronomy side, the military side.
We hope that's true.
Yeah, I think that's the only way. You can't do all of this in one hearing. You got to break it out.
But I'm not sure you could do all of it in 100 hearings. That's kind of my point.
I brought up that point yesterday with Sean Cahill. I mean, you just can't. You can't. There's way too much here. Which brings me to this. If this continues to open up like it is, then we have this whole other section of the phenomenon, which is abductions, cattle mutilations, human mutilations, hybridization, direct contact, and what is going to happen with all of those individuals? You can't have one domino fall and not have them all fall, can you?
Eventually, absolutely. You know, it's possibly no coincidence that the next project that Ralph Blumenthal jumped on was writing a book about experiencers. You know, so if you look at that's pretty interesting, because he's got a book about John Mack, and now there's a screen option in play about John Mack. This is a big icebreaker for the experiencers. And you know, I'll tell you something else that's really interesting. I just interviewed Gary Nolan. You can see in the back of the clip, I kind of cornered him about studying the materials, but something else that he has discovered about the experiencer phenomenon and about the brains of the people that are having these things happen is absolutely off the charts incredible. And we now have scientific validation that there could actually be something to these phenomena. And there's been a lot of speculation that a lot of these things are interconnected, like angelic experiences, extraterrestrial experiences, transformative spiritual experiences, all the encounters with spirits, encounters with aliens. People like Ray Hernandez and people inside of MUFON have been generating scientific reports to say, wait a minute, all this stuff is connected. And in my interviews with John Alexander, one of the biggest things that he wants to point out to everybody is that the ET phenomenon is not, even if we say, okay, we've got aliens coming from Zeta Reticuli, they have ships, they visited us for years, it doesn't even scratch the surface of answering these questions. And so what we're dealing with now, as all of these factors that you just mentioned come into play, we are dealing with the fact that the very nature of our reality is being revealed to us in ways we can't understand. And the ET question is only a small part of it, and it's all interconnected. And that's the next step. So if we get a revelation tomorrow that, yes, there's many different spacefaring races joining us and that come here, guess what? It's only the tip of the iceberg. And there's already enough evidence out there to show that that's probably true.
One of the things that it just stays in the back of my mind, that if we continue with this, Roswell has got to be discussed. I mean, it just has to be. and which pulls in the Air Force and the Army Airfield and the Army Air Force back then, and what they knew. But Roswell is just sitting out there, and it hasn't been. It's been mentioned, but do we open that up and do we finally try to close that part of our history out? Do you want to see something like that? I do.
Oh, of course we all do. But, there's a big problem with Roswell because it and a couple of incidents around that time are the beginning of the deception. Did you know that I have a Freedom of Information Act request that reveals that shortly after Roswell happened, to whatever it is that happened there, the Army, because we didn't have an Air Force at the time, the Army formed an interplanetary research group that was actually part of the Army. And when you dig into it and you try to find out what's going on with that, you find out that it got rolled into Project Blue Book. Supposedly, it was never a formally constituted group, which they tend to do a lot. They call them ad hoc groups. But why, after Roswell, if the stories and the legends are false, why would the Army of that day form an interplanetary research group that was actually a thing? I mean, they just finished the war. They've got nuclear stuff to deal with. Why do that? And so there's all these little breadcrumbs that are there to be found that aren't speculation. And when you add them all up, no jury would vote to acquit the story of Roswell.
Well, there was in a 30-day period, you had Kenneth Arnold, of course, right, Mount Rainier, and you had Roswell, but you also had Rhodes and his photographs out of Phoenix. And when you look at the Rhodes photographs now, which clearly show what many today would describe as a black triangle, but I can tell you this: those photographs, those weren't any known aircraft types that we had at that time.
Right.
In the Rhodes case, which was different from Kenneth Arnold and different from Roswell, you had men in black. You had people showing up at his house, grabbing his camera, taking his film, not returning it for 2 years. And there were elements of that case that we talk about Kenneth Arnold, we talk about Roswell. At the same time, July 1947, we have the Rhodes photographs taken in Phoenix. And why would the Air Force show up at his house and confiscate everything if it's nothing?
Well, remember, we didn't have an Air Force then. The Air Force came after the Roswell incident from Wright-Patterson. Wright-Patterson was an Army air base. And so, this was probably this interplanetary research group that got formed, and they were tracking everything down right in that time frame. And these guys got busy. I've talked to Michael Schratt, who's done a lot of great research about crashes, and he's documented, like over 100 potential, and I do say potential, crashes with thousands of witnesses, and some of them very well detailed out. And these things that happened around the Roswell time frame, this interplanetary research group, the formation of MJ12, which whether that's real or not, it only makes sense that they would have put together a group to manage this at the highest levels. It's all pretty much it's logical. It makes sense, and I just wish they'd come clean with it, because this is really the beginning of this. I think the lie has been covered up from way before then, but the beginning of the modern infrastructure of deception started in that time frame, I think. From the standpoint of the church, it's been going on for a lot longer. We know that there's stuff at the Vatican that goes back to deep into human history that they refuse to talk about. And Danny Sheehan has tried. He used to be the attorney for the Jesuits. He's gone to the Vatican and said, could you please show us your historical documents that might pertain to this? And they don't say we have none. They say no. And this current thing that we're dealing with, the hearings, the new story, all it is a way to sweep that stuff aside for another time while still getting disclosure forward. I think they need to get disclosure out of the way, and the minutia that they think is minutia might get revisited later or completely absolved from history. But well,
it's we've had a lot of action in 2022, 2021. We're halfway through now. We're at the end of May. We're heading into June. Is 2022 the year? Does the big D go down?
I think that, a little inside information. I think that it has a lot to do. There's a few more steps that are going to happen. Lou's writing a book. That's going to have to go through the DOD. It's going to take a while before that book hits the shelves. I don't think there's going to be a major clear disclosure until after that. I think this book is a part of it. I think he's going to be allowed to reveal a lot of stuff he hasn't been able to reveal so far. And I think that book is going to be another icebreaker. My film is kind of a bridge between the inability to say the A word and the ability to say the A word by these very people. We've talked about this. And so I think somebody told me a 5-year time frame, and that was about 4 years ago, or about a year ago. And it's somebody who should know, but again, you don't know what you don't know. But I think within the next 5 years, a pretty decent disclosure that acknowledges everything that can be acknowledged. I'm not sure. I think we're going to keep getting drips up until then. So maybe about 4 years to go, if my information is correct.
Well, I think it's 2022. I think something's going to go down. I don't think it's going to come from the government. I think something else is in play. I do. That would be fantastic, and I hope it happens. I hope it happens. Like just slightly after my film comes out. Right. Well, and I'm only suggesting that because I think that there are many people that understand that something's about to go down that they can't control. And
there's that.
Yeah. The only way to get out in front of this is things like the hearings and get the public absolutely talking about this. We always say drip, drip, drip. Well, you know what? When it goes down, you can't have a shock factor there. I think it's got to be a softball pitch, as soft as the underarm pitch can be.
No, it's baby steps. And all of us in the field that are indignant as to this fact, we just need to understand there's 7 billion people on the planet. Hardly any of them know anything about UFOs besides what they've watched on the occasional episode of Ancient Aliens. They need to be brought along. And even though we're sitting there with our arms folded going, okay, come on, get with it. There's a broader agenda at play and a broader audience that is not as sophisticated on the topic as a lot of us are. And we need to just kind of be there for that. And so there's people that put a lot of thought into it. We might not like the way we're getting it, but there's a bigger reason. So
thank you for that, Ron. Thank you for the conversation tonight. And the one thing, the big reveal from the show, I'm going to be playing the guitar solo on Ron's single about aliens.
That'll be fun.
I'll talk to you. Hey, Ron, thank you so much, my friend. You're out there fighting the good fight. It's going to be a great year. You're a big part of it. Thank you so much, my friend.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks a lot.
Ron James. What a great show tonight. And it's perfect. And it's the best way for us to close out night 3 of our UFO week here on Fade to Black. It was just a perfect night for me. An absolute perfect night. Tomorrow night here it is. That's right. You guessed it. It's Fader night with open lines all night long. I am your host, Jim Church. And here's the deal. Let me get straight to it. All right? Let me get straight to it. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Announcers are, our webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR over the Game Changer Network. And this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Fader night, open lines all night long. Until then, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.